So here we are on the drafting table. My name is Aminat. So we are about to draft our pattern. So I want you to know that drafting hair corset, we have different ways of drafting hair corset. But I'm going to make it very simple for you. I'll be using the easiest method ever to draft this pattern so that even if corset has been looking so difficult for you, this class will make it very easy for you, okay? All I need from you is to pay attention. So right now, I'll show you how to draft a full scale block. So it is from that full scale block, we'll alter to corset and play suit, bodysuit, sorry. Be drafting the front here and the back here, okay? So when you're drafting your own, you don't need to draw all this margin. This is just for tutorial purpose, okay? And so that you can see this clearly. So now the first thing I want to do now is I'll be using marker for this class, but please when you're drafting, don't use marker because I'll be using marker because I want you to see it clearly. That's why I'll be using marker. So the first thing I want to do is to get the shoulder line. So you can see where I'm starting from. Like I said, this is my stick help now. So I'll be starting from here. So I'll mark my shoulder. So the shoulder we are working with is 14. So 14 divided by 2 will give us 7 inch. 7 inches. So I'll mark my 7 inches here. So I'll place my tape vertically downward to get my vertical line. So from the shoulder line down to the first line I'll be getting is the chest line. How do you get your chest line? Bust divided by 6 plus 1.25 plus 1.5 rather. So bust divided by 6 plus 1.5 will give you your chest line. So the bust we are working with is 34. 34 divided by 6 plus 1.5 will give us 7.2. Then you had 1 inch to it. That's the for the back slope, back shoulder slope. 1 inch. That is what you'll be adding to it. So that make it 8.2. So I'll mark my 8.2 on the both side here. 8.2. So after that, from that 8.2, I'll mark my bust point. The bust point we are working with is 10. So I'll mark 10. So after that, I'll mark 13.5 as the under bust. The under bust is 13.5. I'll mark 13.5. So I'll mark 16 inches for the waistline. So after that, I'll come down. From the waistline to my hip line is 8 inches. So I'll mark 8 inches. Please note that all these measurements I'm calling out, they are my home measurements. When you're drafting, please use your measurements, okay? Use your own measurements. Don't use mine, okay? So I'll mark 10. I'll mark 13.5. So why I am marking it on the both sides is just to have a straight line. So I'll mark 16, and from that 16, I'll mark 8 inches for the shoulder line. So after that, I can now take my ruler and draw a straight line. So I'll mark a straight line. All right, so after this, the next thing I want to do is to come to this side and mark 7 inches. That is the shoulder divided by 2. Remember, I said we are working with shoulder 14, so divided by 2 gave us 7. So I'll mark a straight line. Then I'll get my neckline. So the neckline I'll be working with is 3 by 3. Please, 3 by 3, it is not standard. 3 by 3 is not standard. It's not a standard measurement. When you are working, divide your bust by 12 to get your standard neckline, okay? 3 by 3 is not a standard neckline. If you use 3 by 3 for a plus size, it will be too short. So the shoulder slope is 1.5. I'll mark 1.5, then I'll connect. I'll connect it to the neck width, okay? So that is the shoulder slope. So after that, the next thing we want to do is to get the bust circumference. So the bust circumference is 34. 34 divided by 4 will give us 8.5. So I'll mark my 8.5 here. And the waist we are working with is 8. The waist is 29. 29 divided by 4 will give us 7.25 plus 1.5. That's so we are going to open a dart of 1.5 there. So plus 7.25, that will give us 8.75. So I'll mark my 8.75 here. So after that, I'll go to the hip line. The hip we are working with is 38. 38 divided by 4 will give us 9.5. I'll mark my 9.5 here. So after that, I'll connect. So this is the true. So I'll use my French cup to connect this part. So I'm trying to get the number. Excuse me. I'll use it 37. Okay. So that is that. Then the next thing is to plot our armhole. So from this point, I'll go up by 3 inches and come inward by ½ inch. Then I'll use my French cup to construct the armhole. Then I'll connect it this way. So can you see? So after that, the next thing is to plot the dart. So now, for the dart, I'll be using pencil because I'm still going to clean it up. So the bus span we are working with is 7. 7 divided by 2 will give us 3.5. That's the bus span. I'll mark it on the waistline. I'll go to the bust point and also mark the same thing. And I'll go to the hip line and also mark the same thing. After that, I'll make a straight line. So after that, remember we added 1.5 for this dart intake. So that means we are going to open a dart of 0.75 on both sides. So which make it what? Which make it 1.5, okay? 0.75 on both sides, and I'll connect it to the bust point. I'll connect this to the bust point. Then for this down part, I'll go down by 6 inches and connect. I'll go down by 6 inches, then I'll connect. So after this, the next thing we want to do is to come down by 2 inches, which is the difference between the front and the back. The front length we are working with is 16 and the back length is 14. So the difference between the front length and the back length is 2 inches. So we'll connect. This is the bust dart. Okay. So after that, we need to get the blouse length. So from the waistline, I'll go down by 5 inches for the blouse length. You can go down by 4 inches or 5 inches, okay? Please don't go down more than 5 inches. 5 inches is just perfect, depending on how long you want your blouse. So I'll be using 5 inches for this. From the waistline, go down by 5 inches or 4 inches. It's just perfect. So this is what we have. So now this is a basic bodice block, a full scale block, okay? So let me label this. This is the chest line. This is the bust point. This is the under bust. This is the waistline. This is the blouse length. And this is the hip line, okay? So that is that. So the next thing now is to draft the back pattern, okay? So to draft the back, the first thing you want to do is you measure the shoulder. Remember I said the shoulder we're working with is shoulder 14. So 14 divided by 2 give us 7. So I'll mark 7 here. So, and the next thing is to get the chest line. So remember how we got the chest line for the front. We said the bust divided by 6 plus 1.5. Then you had 1 inch shoulder slope to it. So that makes it 8.2. So I'll mark 8.2 here. And I'll do the same thing here. I'll use my French cup to mark a straight line. So after that, the back length we are working with is 14. So from the shoulder line, I'll mark 14 downward. I'll mark 14 downward. So that is the waist, the back waistline. I'll do the same thing here to have a straight line. So this is the back waistline. And remember the front, we took 8 inches downward from the waistline to get the hip line, because the hip line from the waist is 8 inch. So I'll mark 8 inch for the hip line. The hip line from the waist is 8 inches. So I'll mark 8 inches and I'll mark a straight line. So after that, the back length is 5 inches from the waistline. So I'll mark 5 inches downward from the waistline for the blouse length. And I'll mark a straight line. So we have all our horizontal line like that. So the next thing is to get the armhole line. We want to mark 7 inches here for the shoulder. Remember the shoulder is 7. 14 divided by 2 gave us 7. So I'll mark it straight. So after that, the neck width we use for the front is 3, so I'll mark 3. So whatever neck width you use for your front, that is what you will use here for the back as well. But the neck depth for the back is constant, 1 inch constant. Okay? So I'll mark 1 inch and I'll use my French cuff to curve it out. So this is the back neckline. Can you see this? So that's the back neckline. So the shoulder slope for the back is 1 inch. I'll mark 1 inch and I'll connect it to the neck width like so. So I'll connect to the neck width like this. So after that, remember we said the bust we are working with is 34. But before then, we need to take the back tightly. So from the waistline, this is the waistline. So from the waistline, you want to come in by 0.75. Take the back tightly. 0.75. So after that, I'll connect it to the neck depth like this. So this is the back tightening, and I'll connect it to the hip line like this. I'll connect to the hip line like this. So that is the back tightening. So after the back tightening now get the bust. We said the bust is 34 divided by 4. That gave us 8.5, right? So when you want to measure it, you want to take your measurement, you take it after the back tightening. Can you see? This is the back tightening here. So you take it after the back tightening. So you mark your 8.5 here. After that, you want to divide this shoulder slope into 2 to get your armhole curve. So from that point, you want to go inward by 1/2 inch. So after that, I'll take the French cuff and connect. and I'll take it straight up. So now this is the armhole for the back. So to get the waistline, so we said waist 29 divided by 4 will give us 7.25, then plus 1.5 inch for that intake. We said that is what, that is 8.75. I'll mark my 8.75 here. So after that, we said the hip line we are working with is hip 38. So 38 divided by 4 will give us 9.5. I'll mark my 9.5 here. So now I'll connect. So to connect that part, I'll check what I use here. Just to have it equal. So 19, I'll bring it here and mark. So after that, the next thing you want to do is to get the dart line. So to get your dart line from the back tightening, you want to come inward by 3.5. That is for the dart. The nipple to nipple we are working with is 7. 7 divided by 20 was 3.5. So mark 3.5 here. So to get a straight line, remember this is 0.75. When you add it to 3.5, you get 4.25, right? So I'll mark 4.25 here just to get a straight line. And I'll do the same thing at the hip line. This is just to get a straight line. I'll mark it straight. I don't want to use marker here. Let me use pencil. I'll thicken it up. That is why I'm using pencil. So I'll open the dart of the 0.75 on both sides. Then I'll connect. When you want to connect, you want to come down by 1 inch from the chest line. And you go down by 6 inches from the waistline. Then you connect your dart. So after that, this is what we have. So this is a basic body. So it is this basic body we are going to alter into a corset and a bodysuit. But right now, this is the basic body. So the next thing we'll do now is to go into alteration. Alright, so